Hello and welcome to our first conversation style briefing. I am really excited about this and I'm really hoping it goes well. First off, I'm going to introduce myself and the person that I'm talking to. So I'm Leanne and I'm the Learning and Development Coordinator for Sandwell Children's Safeguarding Partnership. Bit of a mouthful. Part of my job is to get new learning out there in new ways, and kind of conversation style briefings is something that's been suggested and asked for, so we thought we would give it a go. Danielle's going to be my guinea pig, so thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I am Danielle. I'm one of the Senior Strengthening Families practitioners. So part of my role is providing bespoke family support to children, young people and families who need some help to make things better.
Brilliant, thanks Danielle, and thank you again for doing this with me. So today we're talking about working with families where there is some neglectful parenting going on. In particular, we're talking about one family's journey with the Graded Care Profile 2 assessment, or GCP2 for short, and how with Danielle's help positive change was able to take place. First off, I just wanted to recap what we might mean by neglect and what we might see if there is neglectful parenting, and Danielle is going to help us with that. So neglect is a priority work stream in Sandwell, and we have seen too many children's deaths over recent years where neglect has been a feature, which assessed earlier and support put in place for families could have been prevented. There has been a lot of activity in Sandwell recently, autumn 24, around refreshing the neglect strategy, as well as the tools that we use, training that's available across partners to help us to understand, see what neglect is, assess it and work with families where there is neglectful parenting sooner. So what is neglect? So the Department of Education gives us this definition. It is the persistent failure to meet a child's physical and/or emotional needs that's likely to result in serious impairment of the child's health or development. It may involve a parent or carer failing to provide adequate food, shelter and clothing, failing to protect a child from physical harm or from danger, or the failure to ensure access to appropriate medical care and treatment. Remembering that it can also include the neglect of or unresponsiveness to a child's basic emotional needs. There are 6 categories of neglect, and with Danielle's help we're going to have a look at each of them, what they mean and what you might see when you're working with families. First on our list we have medical neglect. Danielle, can you tell us what this might be and what somebody might see that's working with a child that's experiencing this?
Yeah, so medical neglect is where parents or carers minimise or ignore the child's illness or health needs. It's also failing to seek medical attention or administrating medication and treatments. It is also important to identify here that an unborn child can also experience medical neglect if their expectant parent fails to attend antenatal appointments to ensure that baby is healthy and well. It also can involve an expectant mother that may be misusing substances, as this can have a negative impact on a child's physical health. If a child is experiencing medical neglect, this may mean that a child's physical, emotional and mental health deteriorates. We may see physical signs such as medical or dental issues, poor language or social skills, regular illnesses, untreated injuries or weight and growth issues. We may also see a child struggling with their emotions and behaviours, difficulty developing meaningful relationships, showing signs of self-harming behaviours and becoming withdrawn.
Gosh, there's a lot going on there. Thank you for that run through, Danielle. That's really helpful for us to know what we might look out for. Next on our list is nutritional neglect. Can you tell me a little bit about this one?
Okay, so nutritional neglect refers to where a child is not given sufficient nutritional value, food or calories to meet their physical and developmental needs. Nutritional neglect could have a negative impact on a child's weight, growth, cognitive development and relationship with foods. Nutritional neglect can be where a parent or carer provides high fat or high sugar junk food in place of balanced meals. Childhood obesity can be a sign of nutritional neglect, as well as a child being underweight.
Gosh, so you've got two ends of the spectrum there. You've got kind of those really emaciated children that aren't being fed enough, and then children that are maybe being fed the wrong things that mean that their weight is particularly high. Thank you for talking to us about that. Next up, we have got emotional neglect. What does that mean and what might we see?
So emotional neglect occurs where a parent or carer fails to provide the child with the emotional support, validation and attention that that child needs to grow and develop through their childhood. Parents or carers may be attentive to certain emotional needs of a child but not others, whereas others completely neglect the child's emotional needs. This may be in the form of ignoring a child, withholding affection, lack of emotional support from the parent or carer through a child's adversities, lack of care for a child's mental health and well-being, isolating the child or pushing the child past their abilities. A child who is experiencing emotional neglect may show behaviours such as becoming withdrawn, lack confidence, they may have difficulty regulating or controlling their emotions, which may lead to that child expressing this through their behaviours, and they might find it difficult to maintain meaningful relationships.
Wow, I think that's something we see quite often where we've got children and young people that are vying for parents' attention, and unfortunately with technology in this day and age, we're in our phones, we're in our laptops, we're working from home, that kind of thing. So it's really important to remind ourselves that our children need our attention too in all sorts of different ways. Thank you for that. So next we're going to think about physical neglect. I think this one's often the most easiest to spot, but what are some of the things that might make this one easier, and some of the things that we would see with this?
Yeah, so physical neglect, it is usually the category of neglect that people often see clearer than others, as there are physical indications of this category of neglect. This is where a child's basic needs such as their food, clothing or home are not being met by the parent or carer. Signs of physical neglect include untidy or unclean home conditions, unsuitable or unclean clothing, a child may present as hungry due to having lack of food, or they may experience repeated untreated illnesses such as infections or maybe nappy rashes for younger children.
Yes, definitely something that we would see the signs of more clearly: a dirty child, an unkempt child, a hungry child. I absolutely hear that. So the next one we're thinking about is lack of supervision and support. What's that?
Well, supervision is needed for all children of all ages. Parental supervision ensures that children are safe and reduces the risk of children experiencing dangerous objects, experiences and situations. If a child is not supervised appropriately by their parents or carers, they may be more likely to experience accidents that could lead to an injury, illness, disability or in some circumstances death.
Goodness. So not being there, not looking out for them and not looking after them, making sure that safety is in place could be quite a dangerous thing for a child. I think as children get older, it's not always about kind of watching over their shoulder. Sometimes it's about what support and what boundaries we might put in place to make sure they're getting the same sorts of level of supervision.
Yeah, so for younger children, as they are growing and developing, they will start to explore the world around them. Younger children require supervision to ensure that their needs are met through creating a safe and stimulating environment, as well as understanding what they need if they are unable to verbally communicate this to us. So that those basic needs are being met. This may also mean when the child starts to explore the outside world, the child will experience different dangers where a parent or carer would need to support that child to be safe. So for older children, such as teenagers, there may be added dangers such as the young person accessing social media, developing friendships and relationships outside the family home. The young person may also be more likely to experience extrafamilial harm, and this is where risk to the welfare and safety of a child arise within their community, their peer group or outside their family home. Examples of this could include peer-to-peer abuse, sexual or criminal exploitation, gang activity and youth violence. Children who experience lack of supervision within the home may be more likely to experience these risks.
Goodness, so it takes them right through to adulthood in terms of what might be going on for them and the risks that they might experience. So the last thing on our list is educational neglect. It's so super important, but what does it mean?
So educational neglect includes the parent or carer's failure to ensure the child is regularly accessing education or attending an educational provision. This could prevent the child reaching their full potential academically. Every child has the right to an education, and it's significantly important for their cognitive, emotional and social development. Educational neglect may be where a child is not attending school, where a child's education and learning is not prioritised, or where a child does not have access to the needed support or resources for their needs to reach their full potential. Educational neglect can have a significant impact on the child's outcomes later in life, such as their ability to gain employment or not having the basic skills in life in order to achieve.
Wow, so super important for children to be accessing some sort of education, the right education for them. Thank you for that, Danielle. I do think it's really important whether you have whether you are working with children and young people directly, you've been doing it for a long time, or you're new to it, that we revisit what neglect might be and what we might actually see if a child or young person is receiving neglectful parenting. It can be super hard for us to understand it in those early stages. So if we've got some ideas of some of the things we might start to see, we can start asking those really important questions. Okay, so let's move on to talk about the journey through the graded care profile 2 that the family you were working with took. Tell me about them.
So this family consisted of a one-parent household where it was just mum and 6 children that were all under the age of 10. The children had other family members outside of their home who would often provide support now and again, but mainly it was mum on her own caring for the children.
Wow, so just mum with 6 children, all under 10. She must have been so overwhelmed at times. So what were the worries when you started working with them?
Yeah, so when we first started working with the family, there were concerns raised around the family's poor home conditions, where the home was unclean and cluttered. The children were displaying behaviours that mum found quite difficult to manage, and mum resorted to using physical chastisement at times to try and manage these. There were also some worries around the children's education, as there was not always being brought into school.
Wow, sounds like there was a lot going on for them. So, tell me, what specifically were you asked to support with?
So, strengthening families were asked to complete a graded care profile 2 assessment with this family. We were also asked, alongside this, to support with parenting strategies to reduce further risk of physical chastisement.
Okay, so the graded care profile 2 is an evidence-based assessment tool that can be used to assess the level of care being delivered to a child or to multiple children and see if there is neglectful parenting present, what does that look like and in what areas. And although you authored this one, did you get some help gathering the information?
Yeah, I did. So I think it was important to recognise that there were a range of different practitioners supporting this family at this time, and they were able to give me further information around what the strengths and protective factors were for this family, as well as where the worries were and what needed to happen to make things better for them. For example, education and health were able to provide me with information around the impact of the children not attending school or not attending their medical appointments, and what needed to happen to prevent the children experiencing further harm or impairment as a result of this. So sharing this information was a vital part of creating a robust plan around this family to reduce further impact of neglect.
Wow, so it sounds like it was a whole team around the family effort with everyone inputting and contributing information to help kind of get everything together in one place. I mean, that's how the GCP2 should be used. Although one person may be the author, it is up to everybody involved with that family to input into the assessment to make sure that it's holistic and that the information's right within the assessment window. Can you tell me about how you might score a GCP2 and what the different scores mean?
Yeah, so the scoring is done on the current care of a child provided by a parent or a carer. So scoring is also provided within each section and subsection of the graded care profile assessment. So the scoring ranges from 1 to 5. So to break it down, 1 is where a child's needs in that section are always met and the parent or carer goes that extra mile. 2 is all essential needs in that area are always met and the child is priority. 3 is where most of the time the essential needs of the child are being met. 4 is where most of the time the essential needs of the child are not being met. And 5 is where the child's essential needs are not met. And this may be due to intentional disregard of the child's needs or the child is not considered as a priority. So when completing the graded care profile, it is important to engage the parent and carer in it to see where they would score. This also enables us to gauge the parent or carer's understanding of each area of care, and it can also open up the discussion around what needs to change to make things better. There may be times where the practitioner may not agree with the parent or carer's scoring, so it's important when we communicate this that we are evidencing this reason through our own observations and information gathering, and always referring back to what needs to happen to make things better for the family.
Wow, that's really comprehensive. Thank you for that, Danielle. Just a reminder that the GCP tool is a licensed tool by the NSPCC. So in order to author it, you do need to have completed the Graded Care Profile 2 training, which you can find on the Sandwell Safeguarding Partnerships training offer on the training booking site. We run them every month, so there's always spaces if people want to book onto it. I will put the link in the description for this video to where you would find that training, so hopefully it would make it easier for you. Even if you're not trained though and you can't author a GCP2, you can still put your information into the person that's authoring it, so you are still involved in that process by providing information, doing direct work with families or children and young people and gathering their wishes and feelings. So back to the journey of your family. How did you introduce the GCP2 to them?
So I took the parent guide of the GCP2 with me and fully explained what it was, why we complete this tool with families, and the aim that areas of needs identified would be included within this plan to try and reduce further impairment or harm as a result of neglect. So this parent in particular was not sure about this graded care profile assessment. So when we broke this down, this was due to her understanding of what we could achieve through it. So we first identified things that were going well for the children, such as areas where the children were doing well. For this family, they were having access to their community in a positive way and had a good support network around them. So when we spoke about some of the strengths, we then moved on to some of the worries. This parent recognised that some of the worries shared by practitioners, but also shared some of the barriers that she experienced into making these changes for the children. For example, she had 6 children and being able to give them all that one-to-one time was quite challenging at times. So it was important that this family understood we wanted to offer support and work with the family and practitioners to improve the family's outcomes. So I left the parent with the information and gave her time to look over this herself before giving me an answer. I felt that this empowered this parent to have an informed decision, and I feel that this was done with her and her children rather than being done at them.
That sounds great, and again the way that we should be working, bringing families along with us rather than doing to them. Now you mentioned the parent guide. You can find that on the Graded Care Profile 2 section of the Sandwell Children's Safeguarding Partnership website. There's all kind of guides in all different languages. There's also an adolescent guide, so a guide for children and young people to explain to them what we're doing, why we're doing it and how. You can only access those if you've done the GCP2 training. You get like a password and the link etc to be able to do that, but as long as somebody is part of that kind of group of people doing that GCP2 has done that training, has got that access, they can download those booklets, and then whoever the right person is to have that conversation can support that. So how about those working with the family? What was their involvement?
So as soon as we've received consent to complete the GCP2 from the parents, I asked all practitioners and requested information to inform the tool. So this included what was going well for these children, as well as where there were worries and the impact of these worries on their overall wellbeing and development. I also asked for information around what support was being offered and how this could make a difference for this family. We also had regular core group meetings, so it was a good way of gathering and sharing information around the care being provided to the children, but also what needed to happen to make things positive and make positive changes for this family.
Brilliant. So again, that's back to everybody working together for positive change for these children. So what was Mom's reaction? I mean, 6 kids, all under 10. I can imagine she had a lot going on and had assessments already if they were on child protection and you guys were attending core groups. It sounds like she's already had assessments in terms of her parenting, etc. So how did she respond to being involved with this?
Well, I think what helped was that it was done with this mum, and I completed home visits to see the family, gained information through discussions with the children, discussion with parents, the family, and through observations. I was quite mindful this family had a lot happening for them and didn't want this to feel like just another assessment. It was important that it was meaningful. There were times we had sessions just playing games with the children. Sometimes I'd visit Mum when the older children were at school to check in and gain her views on how things were going, as well as engaging with the children to see how they were feeling and gaining their views. It was important that this was timely and had a time in mind to complete this by to ensure that the plan could be implemented without any drift and delay of needed support.
That sounds amazing. So kind of a whole range of different work going on with just Mum and the children, and just the children to make sure that everybody was involved with that. So we've got some pictures on this slide now. Can you tell me a little bit about those? What were they? What did you do with them?
Yeah, so these are the kids' needs cards. So these are cards that can be used for parents or carers to explore what they feel children need, maybe some of the time, most of the time, or maybe not at all. This was a good activity to complete, as this helped me understand what Mum's main parenting values were and better understand her views on these. And it also opened up discussion around Mum's own parenting and what she had experienced growing up. That gave me insight into some of the ways Mum may parent her own children. It also developed discussion around if there were areas where Mum identified a care need, where she felt this was needed most of the time, but only provided some of the time. And actually, why was this?
Fab. So it sounds like they were a really good tool to aid discussion around the current parenting of her own children, but also help Mum to reflect on some of the examples she was given around how to be a parent from her own parenting experience. Sounds like a great activity.
Yeah,
So were there any other interventions that you did with Mum or with the children or as the family as a whole?
Yeah, so during our involvement, I did complete sessions with the children and Mum to build their relationship through the use of positive play and open communication. I also completed sessions with Mum and the family around understanding the impact of different parenting strategies and understanding behaviour being a form of communication. So this hopefully supported Mum to better understand the children's behaviours and adapt more appropriate and safer strategies to manage and support the children.
And that sounds amazing. One of the interventions that I've got in front of me here is something called 3-2-1. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so this was something that me and Mum developed. So Mum shared that one thing that she wanted to develop on was her ability to be more emotionally open and receptive towards her children. So we developed a 3-2-1 strategy. So that included Mum sharing 3 things with the children where they may have done something well or where she felt proud of them to encourage positive praise and communication. We then discussed Mum initiating 2 forms of physical affection, such as a high five, a hug, or even a thumbs up. We then looked at Mum initiating one I love you to the children. So this was to support and build that foundation where Mum was able to show warmth and validation to the children, but also it supported to build on their relationship.
That sounds amazing. And we talk about relationship-based practice and us operating in a relationship-based way, but it sounds like you really supported Mum to think about her relationship base with her children to support that positive parenting and then kind of better behaviour management, better communication and more affection between them. Brilliant. So what happened next?
So we started to recognise that some positive changes had been made for the family. We identified further support that the children and Mum could access as part of a team around the family, and that could reduce the impact of neglect. We recognised that some positive changes were being made in the home, such as Mum changing and decorating the children's home and bedrooms to make them more age appropriate for the children. We noticed the children accessing education and the resources within their school for their needs. Mum also reflected on what changes she felt she needed to make within herself to make things better, such as mental health and wellbeing support. We also saw as well the family were really stepping up around the family. So people like maternal aunt were coming on board, maternal nan were coming on board, and that really helped Mum with managing the children's needs.
Wow, brilliant. So by working with Mum and her relationships with those around her, it meant that she got extra support from her kind of wider family as well, which must have benefited the children greatly. So did you get any feedback from Mum once things started to change with the family?
Yeah, so I did actually receive a text from Mum to thank me for enabling her to open up, and she was glad that I supported her to do that. So this was great to hear, as we know that Mum could bottle up her worries, which could make it difficult to offer the family the right level of support they needed at times. But it was nice to hear that Mum felt that it was best for her to open up and that enabled her to make changes.
Brilliant. So I'm going to read that message out because it's on the screen in front of me for anyone that's kind of listening rather than watching. It just says, thank you for getting me to open up. It's hard, but somehow you've managed to get me to, and I'm happy. In a way, you've got me to do that, so thank you. And that's really positive praise. Well done, Danielle. So it really sounds like the right intervention at the right time that helped to prevent further neglect and reduce the level of the neglect that was already taking place for that family, leading to happier, healthier and thriving children.
Yeah, it was identified through the use of the GCP2 that emotional care was identified as an area Mum needed some support with. And that wasn't initially the main area of concern. However, through use of open discussions with GCP2 and relationship-based practice, it was identified through observations of the children expressing behaviours connected to their emotions they struggle to regulate and understand. Sometimes as practitioners, it is important to recognise that not everything is intentional. For this family, Mum also was able to reflect on her own childhood upbringing and adverse childhood experiences and how this influenced her own care she provided for her children. Sometimes it is about making those small things count through the use of interventions, recognising small positive changes that families make. For example, this parent wanted to develop a response to her children by being emotionally receptive. Therefore, we focused on building small steps and creating a foundation to demonstrate emotional warmth and develop this approach to improve emotional care and acceptance that the children received.
So it sounds like something like the 3-2-1 that you did with her was really helpful in Mum achieving the goals that she'd set for herself around how she wanted to support and have a relationship with her children. That's a brilliant outcome. So what can we all do, every single one of us working with children and young people, to get better at identifying and working with neglect? Because it sounds like all of us have got a part to play in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as practitioners supporting or having involvement with children and families, we all have a part to play in keeping children safe. It's important we continue to develop a greater understanding of neglect and the impact that this has on children and their outcomes in life. Within Sandwell, we have access to the neglect awareness training, which can support building that foundation to understanding what neglect is, signs of neglect, and what we can do in our role to reduce the impact of neglect. Also within Sandwell, we have access to GCP2 training. As mentioned, it is a licence-based tool, so it is important that practitioners are trained in the GCP2 in order to use it. We also need to ensure we are communicating with each other in a timely manner. Lack of information sharing has been a feature where there has been significant concern around a child's outcomes and safety. Therefore, by sharing information, we can work together to review plans of support and ensure the right intervention is offered at the right time. We also have a wide community offer we can access within Sandwell, such as our family hubs, our children's services, school, health, youth services, early years settings. So it's important we are able to support our families to utilise these services in order to support them to meet the needs of their children.
Wow, it sounds like we're really lucky in Sandwell in terms of the offer that we've got around training and kind of supporting us to use these tools, relationships between kind of different agencies, as well as the offer out there for families that includes the voluntary and community sector, our faith sector, family hubs, and you've mentioned kind of schools, health, etc. So I think as long as we're all working together, we should start to see some improvements. So just a final thank you from me really. So thank you to Danielle for coming, speaking to me. I think we were both a little bit nervous about doing this as the first one today, but hoping that this is going to be really useful for some practitioners to help them kind of see the value in taking some time to understand what neglect is, what they might see, what they might be able to do about it, and using the tools that we've got available to us, such as the graded care profile to help us to complete that work and have that positive impact on those families that we're working with. Remember, this is a partnership, it is a team around the family, and not one single service can get the full picture or should be expected to do that on their own. So please do carry on working together to support each other. Thank you very much, Danielle, and hopefully we'll see you again for another one.